Thank you, Jimmy.
Next up, Russ and I are going to review Pulp Fiction.
You're going to subscribe to this video, you're going to like this video, and then you're going to go home and off, and that's all you're going to do.
Another outstanding movie that came out today, my favorite movie of all time, and that is for Pulp Fiction.
Shit, Negro, that's all you had to say.
Again, this came out December 6th, 4K Ultra HD from Paramount in a regular and in a steelbook, which we talked about. I feel like the regular black and white edition is the only way to go here. I don't know that that steelbook is worth a damn. We'll talk a little bit about the transfer a little bit later and about the upgrade. It does look great. Let's just give a little bit of an intro on Pulp Fiction. I can't imagine there's many people out there that don't know what this is or haven't seen it, but considering this is a comprehensive review, we're going to start from the beginning.
Sounds good to me.
That's a 1994 crime drama. I know you love
it's
that.
not.
I know you love that.
Let's call it a crime dramedy.
Well, this crime dramedy came out from Quentin Tarantino in 1994, a follow-up to Reservoir Dogs, telling several tales of crime in L.A. is the synopsis that IMDb gives it. Stars John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Bruce Willis, Harvey Keitel, Ving Rhames, and Tim Roth.
Pretty smart, huh?
And this was the very first movie that Miramax fully funded, also sending them off the map, after its success, which it was. It was a huge success, critical success, audience acclaim, won the Best Screenplay Oscar.
Thanks.
It reignited Bruce Willis. It reignited John Travolta.
The fuck does that mean?
And Samuel L. Jackson to some degree. I feel like Samuel L. Jackson was already kind of like doing his thing, but I think maybe this gave him more prominence for sure, just because of how electrifying he was.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
Basically, after Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino and this guy, Roger Avery, their idea was to write 3 stories. Each would write one, and they were going to get a third director to write a third one, and they were going to basically make like a little anthology, so to speak, which kind of makes sense because that's sort of what Pulp Fiction is. There's like different stories that with characters in them that all sort of overlap into each other's stories. The one thing that Quentin Tarantino said about this movie being still an independent film, still having not a lot of money to work with, this was a $8 million film that he wanted to look like $20 million. He wanted it to look epic in every way except for the budget. That's basically how he described his vision.
That's so on the money. That's exactly what it is.
That's a bold statement.
There's so many reasons why it feels that way too. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about why we love this movie so much. Let's recommend it to the people that haven't seen it. And I kind of want us to just start by just talking about the cast in general, and I feel like they are one reason why this movie feels so damn epic. There's a few elements in my mind that really make this movie what it is, and this ensemble cast and the people that make it up are they're all unforgettable. And no matter who they are, no matter how small of a part they have, Christopher Walken's in it for like 2 minutes. It's like you don't forget his part at all. I love that, and like when you think of John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, it's like their build is maybe the main characters. They're also maybe the most well-known, but a lot of these people have equal screen time and they're all just as important, and they all make this film have so much more personality.
Personality goes a long way.
Definitely. This cast is incredible, man, and everyone's great in it. Tarantino doesn't back down from what he wants.
Yeah.
But if any other, with most filmmakers would, they wouldn't get that cast. Who wanted to work with John Travolta in 1994? What major studio was like, hey, let's get John Travolta? That wasn't happening.
Vodka.
I'm sure this is a well-known fact for most people, but again, if you did not know this was supposed to be Michael Madsen to act in this role, and he turned it down for Wyatt Earp, which I'm sure he later regretted.
He's a fucking asshole.
Travolta nailed this role. He took this movie at a reduced rate. He took a chance. It revitalized his career.
The fuck does that mean?
Listen, Samuel L. Jackson is brilliant in this film. This film is Samuel L. Jackson's in my mind. But I think because he shines so much, people tend to overlook what Travolta brought here. And I've always said he brought this aloof nature, almost confused, almost I'm not fully in the moment. I would love to see what Madsen would have brought to the table. It's hard to picture it any other way than transplanting Mr. Blonde into Pulp Fiction. I think Travolta deserves more praise for what he did here. It's just kind of unfortunate he's up against, in my opinion, one of the coolest, badass motherfuckers, iconic goddamn performances ever on film.
Get the fuck out my face with that shit.
Samuel L. Jackson is cool. Let's talk about Samuel L. Jackson. He's the perfect balance to John Travolta in the scenes that they are in. And Samuel L. Jackson, who was supposed to be Lawrence Fishburne and was also supposed to be Paul Calderon, who was the guy that's, selling the Red Apple cigarettes behind the bar. I don't know that I knew Samuel L. Jackson very well, but looking back on this role, even though it is my favorite movie, I think everything that Samuel Jackson is in this movie is why I think Samuel Jackson is great. I think he brings intensity, he brings humor, he brings great delivery of dialogue and language and his presence and even his outfit. Just everything about him. It's just like it is what makes him great. When I see Samuel Jackson in a movie, if he's bringing those elements, it's a great performance.
I think Samuel L. Jackson was one of the only actors to understand what Quentin Tarantino was doing early on. Mm-hmm. And I think, as we said, he's such a good thespian. He can sing dialogue. He has the voice. He has it all. But even beyond that, I think he understood the exploitation elements, the blaxploitation elements. I think he liked the same movies Tarantino does. I just think he knew that language. He knew what it was. He was in a rehab when he got offered Jungle Fever and I think Pulp Fiction around the same time. And he credits both of these films with staying sober. He was met with critical and mass success through these films, and it just helped him stay sober. He's never thought about it twice.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
Well, then you got Bruce Willis, who, again, he wasn't doing so well. But this movie brought Bruce Willis some new respect as an actor. Again, just like John Travolta, took a chance in this material.
Did it bring a new respect to Bruce Willis for you at 12 years old? Because it did for me. I loved Die Hard. Last Boy Scout is one of my favorite movies. But up until this movie, I viewed him as an action guy or like the moonlighting guy. Whereas this one, when I saw Pulp Fiction at 12, I was like, wait, that dude's actually going to do some weird shit.
Don't feel the least bit bad about it.
Like, wow, he's kind of an artist. I didn't think he would. I thought he was just the action guy.
I definitely remember feeling very just in awe that he was in this movie I was watching. Especially when he shows up. Like after you've already seen what you've seen, and then Bruce Willis shows up. It's just another element to this movie's, I don't know, imagination or creativity or just the chance that it takes to put these people in these situations, even his storyline, where it goes. Like you just haven't seen Bruce Willis be involved in material like this ever, especially what his character goes through. It's like wild.
He's honest.
That to me is an artist. He took a chance and he continued to do it. He did it with M. Night Shyamalan with The Sixth Sense. M. Night Shyamalan wasn't anybody big, but he read it, reacted to it and said, nah, I believe in this guy, so I'm going to do it. He believed in Pulp Fiction, so he did it.
Yep.
And you know what? It worked out beautifully for him.
Love you, Bruce. Hope you're doing well. Uma Thurman also, like you said, nobody had really ever heard of her before.
It's my favorite role of hers.
Yeah, I mean, and she's another person who, just like almost everybody else we said, she's got just as much screen time maybe as anyone else. She's in one segment basically, but she steals the movie. She's on the promotional materials. Like she's another person. Like when you think Pulp Fiction, you think that poster, you think Samuel Jackson.
You think, God damn.
I said, God damn. God damn.
She's excellent. She's excellent in this, and she deserves to be on that poster.
This sounds like you actually have something to say.
And Harvey Keitel, just speaking on him for a second, again, this role was written for him. He's in the movie for 10 minutes, but you don't forget about him ever.
Spoken like a true prodigy.
Easily Tarantino's best performance is in this movie.
Yeah.
And God, I'm not saying it's great.
Does he put on an Australian accent?
The fuck are you talking about?
Jeez, what the fuck was he thinking in
don't
Django?
know. Why?
At least it was only for like a second
Why?
in Django.
Give yourself an accent.
You got something to say, mate. You say it.
It's like the perfect cringy white guy. And that's kind of like, you are cringy. You are. Like, I love it. You cast yourself as this fucking guy.
Jimmy, she ain't gonna leave. Don't fucking Jimmy me, Jules.
And then Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, they're impactful. They're in the beginning, they're in the end. It's quick, but what they're there for is meaningful and their performances are great. I think this movie kind of throws you off to the point where you just don't know what to expect next, and I think that's what also kind of kept me on the edge of my seat as I watched this movie. I think they start you off that way where two people are having a conversation. It seems normal enough. And then next thing you know, they flip the switch and they're like MFing and they got guns out. And it's the same thing the very next scene where they're in the car and they're talking about his, Jules and Vincent's trip to Paris or Amsterdam and wherever he went. foot massages, everything's cool, and all of a sudden they flip the switch and then the violence starts. It's like literally every segment, every time you see anything go on, there's a very long extended period of time where there's this great dialogue, but there's just this uneasy feeling because it always ends in a very not so great way, especially like the Vincent and Mia segment. Very casual conversation, interesting topics. It's great. It's cool. It's fun. Violent as shit at the end, with like all the overdose stuff. It's really interesting how that happens almost every single time. And it just you just never know what to expect. And I really like that about this movie.
I had an uncle and he had seen it in the theater. He was not a fan. He hated it, right? He was saying, I couldn't stand this movie. It was long. It was boring, all this stuff. He's like, but there's one part where they're in a car and John Travolta accidentally blows this guy's head off and they argue about going over a bump. I could not stop laughing at this at all.
Quentin, he even said to me when the movie was done, I didn't know I was making a comedy.
And I'm like 11 years old at this time. And I'm like, what? I got to watch this movie. Holy shit. But I said the soundtrack.
Great story. Compelling and rich.
Fuck you.
The soundtrack, yes.
God damn it, it's a podcast. I'm here to talk about my Pulp Fiction memories.
Dude, hey, people love that shit. I mean, the YouTube audience doesn't, but the people that are listening do.
My uncle likes that story.
Could you say that this is his best soundtrack? What's his best soundtrack?
To me, no.
That's what I'm
That's the
positing.
subjective part, but
Yes.
is it the most representative of his films? Yes.
And why it also works is because when you listen to this, it's like listening to the movie. This is in chronological order from the first, they have the clips that are in there that kind of like make you feel like you're listening along to the movie instead of watching it. So I feel like it just all really works in that way too. Plus the soundtrack is cool. Like there's great pop stuff. There's great soul stuff. I love the surf rock stuff. I had never really gotten too much into surf rock at all. This shit, every surf rock song you put on here is awesome.
It's like I'm looking for the rhythm that this movie needs to play in. But that really helps me sink my hooks into, oh, hey, maybe we'll make this. When you do it right and the music and the movie kind of goes in sync with each other, it's just kind of like you're flying or you're skating or something. And those are always just like some of the funnest parts to watch with an audience because they're really engaged.
The nature in which this movie is told, it is non-linear. This is the movie that really made me love that style of storytelling or that style of filmmaking or the way to present the movie to an audience. Like there have been plenty of times later on in my life where when I see a movie that is non-linear and it's done really well, it is something that I think stays with me longer. And when you think about Pulp Fiction and the way that it's shot and the way that they kind of mess around with the timeline a little bit, they show you a little bit of the ending and the beginning and, and the way that, John Travolta, he's in the beginning and then he gets killed, but then he comes back again. It's like all that kind of stuff is kind of funky, but I don't know that if you put it in order that it would have the same effect. And I just think that whatever that decision was to cut it up in that way, to put it in that order specifically, really freaking works.
Pretty smart.
Showing that beginning and bringing it around to the end again was such an oh shit moment that when I watched that as a kid, and I'm sure there were plenty of people who maybe saw it coming, but I didn't see it coming. Like when they go to that cafe and they're eating and then all of a sudden you realize that they're at the beginning of the movie, which is actually the end of the movie now. It was so mind-blowing to me. Like I just was so like taken aback by that I was like, wow. Like that was literally like the cherry on top for everything I just watched. I was like, holy shit. I'm blown away that this is what this movie's doing to me now.
Dude, I remember being a kid as soon as I saw Garso, coffee.
You're like, what?
And I was like, whoa, wait. And enough time had passed to where you remember it, but you kind of forgot about it because there was a lot of stuff that went on, like it was the perfect amount of time to where it was a surprise again, but you weren't completely cold by like, wait, what's going on? You weren't confused.
Yeah. We're probably preaching to the choir and everybody that's sitting here listening to this has probably already seen this movie, maybe has the same thoughts, but this is why, I don't know, this is why love this movie, all that combined just makes this one of the best movies, the best movie I've ever seen. And I know that's a little cliche to say now in the era that we're in and Pulp Fiction is what it is. But at the time when I saw it on VHS the year after it came out, it was immediately my favorite movie. It ignited my love for movies and not just movies like it, but just wanting to see cinema, wanting to like be someone that, really kind of like dug into that kind of stuff and figured out connections and who directed what and they produced this and what else is that person in. It really just changed me. And that's why we have this channel right now.
Alone.
So you can thank Pulp Fiction for that.
You're not alone. In that regard, I always thought Pulp Fiction and Nirvana's Nevermind had a lot in common in that you don't have to sell out. You can just be fucking raw.
Yeah.
And I loved Pulp Fiction did that.
It is considered one of the most influential films of that decade. And at this point, some may say of all time.
I think so.
When you hear or read anybody talk about it, your bullshit detector goes off. And you're like, that has to be hyperbole. This is one of those rare movies where nobody's exaggerating. It was that big in 94. It did change a lot.
Yeah, it did. And indie films after that were being made left and right because it was like, oh, this is like the new formula. Plus they're cheap as shit to do.
There was a period of, it seemed like 5 years in the 90s where like every crime film kind of had this like ironic bit, and they talked about TV shows and played music in a weird way. And did that bother you? And I go, well, no, it doesn't bother me. One, I don't think any of them are as good as mine, so it just makes mine look better and better.
Tarantino now, he's put out a second book. He's doing a little bit of a tour on that. He's got a podcast. He's working on a television show now, I read. That was something that he mentioned on one of his little press tours. He's also said a funny quote about what one of his favorite movies is. Of his.
I really do think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my best movie. I love my movies. I'm making them for me. Everybody else is invited. All right.
Man,
I'm making this for me. That's great.
He's honest about it.
Yeah.
And all directors should be doing that. There is nothing more satisfying than watching. Spike Lee makes movies for him.
Mm-hmm.
Brian De Palma was making movies for him. When you have somebody who is so true to their own they're so true to their own desires and all that. There's a reason why we see Uma Thurman's feet all the time. I applaud him because it's like you are that brave to put out everything, your soul into this, your heart, your love, and you can't go wrong when you do that.
And now it's out in 4K for the people. Hasn't had too many physical media releases over time. This is its first 4K release. We did a 4K comparison. The screenshots look great. The transfer looks great. I don't have a copy of this. We haven't actually looked at it ourselves. Just from what reviews have already said, from what we have seen as far as some examples are concerned, it looks fantastic. It's on par or very similar to the Reservoir Dogs transfer. You're getting maybe not quite the level of revitalization, because I think the Blu-ray for Reservoir Dogs was much worse, but this still looks great. It looks awesome. So check out that video if you want to kind of see some of those screenshots. But this is a classic film. Deserves all the praise that it gets. Deserves all your money for the 4K if you're going to get it. And yeah, so love you. Love you, Pulp Fiction. Thank you for changing my life.